All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, when the overtime period began on Sunday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you could almost hear a pin drop at the raucous venue as the Atlanta Falcons season was unofficially over. The Falcons needed to defeat the Carolina Panthers while also hoping that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would lose to the New Orleans Saints. And early on, it looked like the Saints were going to do their part as the Falcons, to help out the Falcons rather, as New Orleans had built a 16-6 halftime lead over the Bucks. But the second half of the game would see the Bucks come back, and they got into the game in the third quarter with a touchdown, while the Falcons could not shake the pesky Panthers who were attempting to finish their season on a positive note. The Falcons found themselves in a dogfight with those cats from Carolina as these two division rivals were trading scores throughout. And each time the Carolina scored, their young quarterback, Bryce Young, was gaining more confidence. And even though that the Falcons had knotted the score at 38 apiece with just under a minute left in regulation to force the overtime period, their fate was about to be sealed roughly 450 miles away in Tampa Bay. The Bucks rallied to close out the Saints by the score of 27-19. And in the process, Tampa wrapped up their fourth consecutive NFC South title as the Falcons let it slip through their grasp. The Falcons were in prime position to win this division, as through 9 games this season, Atlanta was 6-3, which included sweeping the Bucks this season. But the Falcons are going to go into the offseason haunted by that 4 game losing streak that they had from mid-November to early December. And of course, in doing so with the Falcons with their losing streak, it opened the door for Tampa Bay. Now, with Tampa, pardon me, with Atlanta rather, it's one of those where with that losing streak, the biggest thing, in my opinion, that hindered the Falcons was the play of then former starting quarterback Kirk Cousins, because we saw Kirk Cousins throughout that stretch handing out interceptions like they were Christmas presents. Okay, and it kept the door open for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who began this season with a record of 4-6. But then we would see Tampa catch fire coming down the stretch. The Bucks would win 6 out of their last 7 games, and they took advantage of the fact that hey, they only faced one team over that stretch with a winning record, while Atlanta over their final 8 would go 2-6. And at the end, the result was Tampa finishing 10-7, while Atlanta was 8-9. And unfortunately for the Falcons, this was supposed to be their year to finally overtake the Bucks for that division, as they were so close a year ago. They brought in Raheem Morris to be their new head coach. The money spent on quarterback Kirk Cousins, and then drafting quarterback Michael Penix Jr. in the first round. For me, I know some people disagree with me at the moment. I thought it was wrong for the Falcons to draft Penix Jr. after they signed Kirk Cousins. Either way, I feel like the two moves kind of handcuffed him, because I said going into last year's draft, the Falcons needed themselves an edge rusher. Okay. And it showed this season because Atlanta had 31 sacks this season. They were 31st in the NFL in that category. If you wanted to draft Michael Penix Jr., fine, but don't sign Kirk Cousins and don't commit the money that you did to Kirk Cousins. You could have used that money to take care of other needs for your team that could have helped you this year. Or if you wanted to sign Kirk Cousins, use that draft pick on an edge rusher. And it's one of those where the play of Kirk Cousins really hindered this team, because I feel like if the Falcons had not committed so much money to Kirk Cousins like they did, guess what? They probably would have made the move to go to Michael Penix Jr. sooner, and possibly, just possibly, We're talking about the Falcons winning this division and being in the postseason right now. Atlanta's going to look back at the fact, like I said, the way that they finished down the stretch. But for me, the biggest games for them, I think the Week 10 loss, where they were heavily favored on the road against the Saints, and then coming out of their bye week in week number 13, and they lost to the Chargers at home 17-13. That was a horrendous game for Kirk Cousins. He threw 4 interceptions in that contest, 0 touchdowns. Okay. And in that game, it was one of those where the interceptions that Cousins was throwing, they weren't even questionable for a rookie quarterback, nonetheless, a veteran quarterback of his status. And again, in my opinion, I feel like the only thing that saved Cousins as long as it did was the fact that the guaranteed money that he was receiving. But nonetheless, on the flip side, if you were Tampa, you just find a way to continue to piece it together with that cover two and all of the injuries that they had to deal with this year. Chris Godwin was out, Antoine Winfield and Mike Evans were out for extended period of time with injuries. Antoine Winfield more than Mike Evans, but nonetheless, it's a credit to general manager Jason Licht, and it's also a credit to head coach Todd Bowles for keeping the ship, no pun intended, headed in the right direction. And again, in the National Football League, it's all about winning your division. The Bucks took care of their business coming down the stretch. They beat all the teams that they were supposed to beat, and for me, I think the biggest one was them going on the road and obliterating the Los Angeles Chargers. Coming down the stretch, I even before that, I felt like the Bucks would win this division, but then after they went on the road and knocked off the Chargers in that fashion, I definitely said it's their division to lose. They took care of it, and it's one of those where we talk about the turnovers with Kirk Cousins. Baker Mayfield, the Bucks starting quarterback, he turns the football over a lot too. But guess what? The Bucks have a better defense than the Falcons defense. They rally, they make the key plays, they get the ball back to Baker. And Baker's one of those gunslingers. When he's on, he's on. And when he's not. But it's one of those where the Bucks have an ability, unlike the Falcons, to survive the turnovers of Mayfield. So again, it's all about winning your division. It's back to the drawing board for Atlanta. I can rest assured know that you're probably not going to see Kirk Cousins with this team next season. They're going to have to eat that dead cap money because the Falcons can't trade him. Nobody's going to take on that contract. They're going to have to release him. But this is going to be Michael Penix Jr.'s team going forward, and they need to find a way to keep piecing this together in order to get over that hump. But on the flip side for the Bucks, now they've got the opportunity to get ready for a home playoff game as they host the Washington Commanders this Sunday night, and they face another young quarterback in one Jaden Daniels. But nonetheless, it was a fight to the finish in the NFC South. But once again, the division title is in the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.